I think for me, that was the beauty of free agency. They put enough stopgaps in that you feel real comfortable with going best player available on defense. You don't feel the need to push for a linebacker. You don't feel the need to push for a corner.
Exactly.
You've got enough stopgaps there that you can kind of take whoever falls to them.
I have a top 10 Raiders big board. Let me read it out to you. You tell me your thoughts, okay?
Yes, sir.
1, Bradley Chubb. 2, Derwin James. 3, Minkah Fitzpatrick. 4, Denzel Ward. 5, Roquan Smith. 6, Vita Vea. 7, Marcus Davenport. 8, Mike McGlinchey. 9, J.R. Alexander. 10, Tremaine Edmonds. Would you go a different route?
There's a few names I might move around a little bit. I like Davenport less than you probably do. I like Jair probably a little more than you do. I really like Chubb at the top. He's a guy who I'm very, very high on. If he fell to the Raiders, I think it would be a no-brainer. He'd be, I think my top choice in this draft, to be honest. I like Vita Vea a lot, so he might be a little bit higher for me. Derwin James is great. Minka's good. I'm not 100% sold on the way I'm with Derwin James, but I like him a lot. So I mean, all those names are names I think that are legitimate. Like the one that stood out for me that I don't love is Davenport. He's a guy that I think is a reach at 10.
Yeah.
But otherwise, most of those names I like.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I have him at number 7. I mean, he has the tool, but he's just so raw, and you don't want to take a prospect that high, You probably take him round 2. But I think Derwin James might fall in. I was thinking of replacing a linebacker and putting him at that nickel position, even in running downs. What are your thoughts on that, going big nickel?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that is becoming more and more popular in the NFL, and clearly Jack Del Rio and Ken Norton Jr. were kind of thinking that way last year. With John Smith as the linebacker safety type position, the big size. I'm not sure that that's the way this coaching staff is going to go.
Yeah.
But like I said, I think very highly of Derwin James and his ability to adapt to lots of different schemes. So I think he's a guy who, regardless of what the Raiders are thinking about doing, they could find a way to make a talent like Derwin James fit.
Yeah. What about if the Raiders don't go on defense? What if they absolutely shock the world and go on with an offensive pick, at 10 or trade back? Who could you see?
I think Saquon Barkley is a name that obviously if he falls to you have to consider. He's a game-changing player. So I think if he for some insane reason fell to number 10, I think you have to consider it at least. I personally, depending on who else is on the board, may still prefer someone on defense, but you can't really get mad at drafting a guy like Saquon Barkley.
No.
No. What about if we traded back? Would you be unhappy if we took Calvin Ridley?
I don't love that idea, to be personally honest, only because I think now that they're keeping Marshawn Lynch, at least as of now, that's the reports. I just feel like offense isn't as huge of a need from running back or any other position, wide receiver, for Ridley, unless you're talking offensive tackle. I just feel like, for me, Saquon Barkley is such a transcendent player that you then ignore that rationale. Whereas Calvin Ridley is a very good player, but he doesn't necessarily motivate me to ignore the rationale of going defense or offensive tackle or best player available at need.
Yeah, hey, I'm all for going on defense in the first round this year. I like running backs. That's probably my favourite position to watch. But defense is one of those positions this year that we really need to establish a core group who, going forward, are going to be, the Raiders' forefront. And I mean, to be honest with you, there's plenty of offensive talent in the other rounds as well. So I think the first couple of rounds, defense, and then as the draft goes on a little bit, I think maybe running back, wide receiver, round 3-4 onwards. But I think the first couple of rounds will literally be defense, in my opinion.
And you know what, James? What really the Raiders would need in round 1 if somebody was to be drafted at that price. I don't know if anyone should be drafted that high, but if you could get a pass rushing interior guy, that would help the entire defense so much, even outside edge guys, cornerbacks. we don't have anyone. We have good run blockers in, Mario Edwards Jr., Justin Ellis, Darius Latham, all those Vandy Vanderdoes. They can all stop the run, right? But who's there in the draft that can rush the passer from the inside? I mean, Vita Vea is really good, but is he really a pass rusher that the Raiders, he can come in and rush the passer from day one? Look, who do you see? Anyone?
Yeah, so Vea, that's the thing about Vea is he is a little bit better at run defense than pass rushing. He's not like a dominant pass rush guy. He can provide, I think, a little bit of push on the interior, which is nice, but not necessarily, be a difference-making interior pass rusher. The guy who I think could potentially be that way is one that a lot of fans won't want to hear his name, and that's because of the heart condition, and that's Maurice Hurst. I think that guy could be a beast in the interior.
That's a big question.
Heart problem, reminds you DJ Hayden, makes you feel kind of nervous. So, I understand why people aren't very.
Well, that wasn't DJ Hayden's problem. The health wasn't his problem. Right. It was just he sucked at turning around and locating the ball. This guy. Oh man.
Yeah, I mean, we alluded to Maurice Hurst before you come on, James, and we actually said that it wouldn't necessarily be a sexy pick, but it would be a pick that would excite me purely for the basis of obviously you're going to get that shove through the middle of the interior who can actually rush the passer, because at the moment we haven't got anything like that in our team really from that position. Justin Ellis and Eddie Vanderdoes are more run stoppers, like nose tackle. So Maurice Hurst has got that ability to rush the passer, so that would be a good pick at 10 if he checks out and if he has a good pro day. I mean, even without the pro day, I mean, he'd still be a solid pick in my opinion, but I think he needs to just answer a lot of the questions before he's even considered even going in the first round.
Hey, James.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's that risk aspect of it. And, taking a pick that high, you maybe don't want to take a risk like that when there's so many other guys who may not be risky. Real quick, I'll say one other name who could potentially provide that, but is a guy who we're looking at, I think taking in a trade back. I think he'd be a reach for him at 10, but if the Raiders are trade back, is Taven Bryan.
Yep.
He's a versatile defensive lineman who I think could be a real nice piece for a rotation in Oakland.
I got a question. If he's a guy, Raiders, a lot of people have him early round 2, but there's a real possibility that he goes end of round 1. If that's
we're talking Bryan?
Taven Bryan. Do you take him at 10 if you really like him and you think he won't be there in round 2 if you can't trade back?
I mean, I think there's a lot of factors, right? Depends on who does fall to you at 10, and also, whether or not you can get a trade back. Because I mean, let's put it this way: if they had their eyes on Bryan the way they did on Hayden, right? Hayden was their man. That was their decision. They were going after him if they had to take him at 3 or if they could get a trade back. Mm-hmm. They ended up trading back on a pretty weak value trade. They didn't get a whole lot for the movement, but that's okay because they got something and took him. And so if they're zeroing in on Taven Bryan as their guy, as the one they're picking no matter what, my hope would be that they trade back, even if it's a weak trade back, even if they're only moving a few spots and getting very little in return, even if they're moving a bunch of spots and not getting a lot in return. I'd prefer that than to reaching for him at 10, because at least for me, I would find it hard to believe that there wouldn't be guys on the board who would be a better value than him, even if that's their guy. So for me, if they got 10 for me, it would be a little bit of a reach. I would have preferred a minor trade back, but he's a talented player who I think can help, so I'm not going to be, screaming and throwing things at the TV like when they drafted Darius Hayward-Bay.
Yeah, I mean, don't forget that a lot of these teams in the first top 10 picks are going to be going after quarterbacks, and then you've got the Bills who have traded up to 12 but will probably want to trade up again to get in front of other teams. So, there's a lot of teams looking for quarterbacks, which means some of the talent on defense is going to fall on that basis. I mean, you've got Barkley. He's going to be gone by pick 5, in my opinion. Then you've got the Broncos. You've got the Jets.
I wonder if the Broncos are going to take a QB. They already have 2 QBs.
Hey, they need to get someone in there, because apart from Case Keenum, they haven't really got anyone else who can really do anything, in my opinion.
There are people reporting that they are still very much in play for a quarterback, so we'll see how that plays. But
and then you've got the Jets, you've got the Browns. You've got a lot of teams looking at quarterbacks this year, and they all want to get the best one. So they're going to be pushing hard to get in that top, 5 or 6 picks or top 10 or whatever you want to say to get the quarterback that they want. So the Raiders, in my opinion, will get some phone calls before or on the draft day, in my opinion. I think we will get some calls. And it's about weighing up. If they've got a guy set in their mind, like James said, and they want to take him, trade back. Even if it's a week deal, trade back, take the player you want, and then you can move forward. You might get a couple of extra picks in, other rounds. Maybe even like in the 5th round where we haven't got a pick at the moment, we might get like a 2nd and a 5th or something like that in the 1st. So, there's definitely options for the Raiders in this draft.
Yeah, man, it's going to be so wide open. You go into a draft party, James? What's going on? What are you doing on draft day?
Oh God, no. I lock myself alone in my apartment and I sit in front of the computer and just write for like 48 hours or 72 hours or however long it lasts. I normally write in somewhere around 50 or 60 articles during the draft and just do nothing but geek out and sit alone like a loser in my apartment.
Is that for blackholebanter.com?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Hey, man.
I am a huge draft nerd, so I basically I used to do like first round parties with people and stuff, but now I'm just way too much of a nerd and I just want to read about the prospects, write stuff, think about who they're going to pick next and just completely nerd out. So I just, total, loser, dark apartment, doing nothing but staring at the TV and with a computer in my lap.
It's cool. It's only 48 hours, man. You can geek out for 48 hours. Not bad. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'd probably stay home and just watch. I don't know, man.
Well, we are actually going to cover the draft, but we're going to...
Maybe afterwards, right?
Yeah, because people are going to obviously be watching the draft. They're not going to tune into us, although we are very popular, I'd like to think. But no,
I wish.
But we're going to cover it afterwards in the morning. So we're going to do a recap show on each day, and just cover obviously the picks and cover who the Raiders have picked. But yeah, no, to be honest with you, it's going to be really late in the UK as well. So I'm going to be up till 5 o'clock in the morning, 3 nights in a row, I believe. So yeah,
James, plug your stuff, man.
Long one.
Well,
thank you. Yeah.
Where can we find you, man? Tell us about your podcast with Q, about your site. The first Raiders podcast I heard was you and Q, so it was it's one of my favorites still. Yeah.
That's good to know, man. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So they already said on Twitter, hit me at Raiders Reporter. You can find all of the content we produce at blackholebanner.com. The podcast itself is also on iTunes and Stitcher and all those major, I think Google Music too. So yeah, check it out. We do our best to kind of, give you as much opinion and content as possible. Q and I are 2 Raiders fans who are the kinds of Raiders fans who would just go nuts during the off season because, when the Raiders sucked, no one was talking about them. ESPN wasn't talking about them. Sports,
right.
None of the major outlets are talking about them. It drove us nuts. So we, decided we'd start creating our own content. That's how I got into writing. That's how he, got into the podcast with me, is we wanted to help, Raiders fans who are obsessive like us have something to fill the time. You know what I mean? So we're not claiming to be insiders or experts or anything amazing like that. We're just fans who love the team so much to such an insanely, borderline sick degree that we want to help out other fans like us and just give you as much content as possible. So, we've got written word with articles. We've got the audio with the podcast. I do Periscope, so you got a little bit of video as well. So, we're just out here trying to help the crazy-ass Raiders fans like us get through the offseason and the regular season.
Yeah. James is a real Raider fan because I saw your wedding picture, man. You're wearing a Raiders shoe, which is you got to be a real fan to do that.
Oh yes, sir. Yes, sir.
My wife would kill me if I did that.
But I got to wear my Raiders kicks at the wedding. Very excited about that.
Where'd you get that? Did you have to pre-order it or something?
It was the Nike. I guess every year comes out with a team shoe, and so this was the team shoe for that year. So I just went down to Nike Town in San Francisco and got them. And yeah, man, they've only been worn once at the wedding, and we'll see. Maybe there'll be some other special times I'll wear them, but they're my very special now good luck Raiders kicks.
That's awesome, man. Hey, man, I know you got to go hiking today. It's nice to be in California with good weather, so I'll let you go. Thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But thanks for having me on, you guys.
If you ever want a sexy British voice on your podcast, just hit me up.
Right on, man.